I was only 8 years old, so I wasn't really aware of what was happening beforehand. I remember that it rained and rained and rained and rained. I think it rained for a week before the flood happened. Well, my most vivid memory is opening up the kitchen door, which would lead down to the cellar, and the water was right up to the doorway. The whole cellar was full of water. I never have forgotten that. So I quickly closed the door, and then we left. So whether it came up any higher, I don't know.
The Hatfield Historical Society has been collecting and preserving Hatfield history, that is, its artifacts and stories, for nearly 50 years. The storyteller you just heard, Rita Prew, was a longtime Society board member and curator of the Hatfield Historical Museum. Rita's work, and the work of earlier curators like Mary Lou Cutter and Bob Sawicki, plus dozens of dedicated board members and other Society volunteers, established the town's two museums and set the stage for where we are today. Without their efforts to collect and save Hatfield history, it is unlikely the collection, as we know it today, would exist.
Here and there, I couldn't be more delighted than to be in Hatfield. I always loved visiting Hatfield. I come here a lot when we were doing research for this exhibit years ago. It was the first time I saw your historical society, and I think my eyes almost fell out of my head. It's absolutely a nationally significant treasure you got here and all this history.
Here's the Governor Carver style chair, circa 1705, that was loaned to the Wadsworth Athenaeum for their Great River exhibit back in 1985. One of the many benefits of our 5-year Community Preservation Act grant, which funded 2 part-time positions in our historical museum, was that it allowed us to find out what was in the collection and then record it with photos in a museum database that we can now digitally search. But there were many other benefits as well.
While it was not directly what we were funding, the inventory work and the restorative work allowed the museum to do more presentations, to provide more opportunities for the public to view some of the items that were stuck in boxes and in grandma's attic, so to speak. And also it attracted attention from researchers that were interested in the collection, and so they would come, and that would then lead to more potential opportunities for displays and interpretive presentations. So we're happy that there were those related benefits from the grant. The museum during this period was getting a lot of exposure in the press and the Daily Hampshire Gazette, which, to my knowledge, and I'm a regular reader of the Gazette, I don't remember that kind of press on that kind of regular basis. And so was it directly related to the CPA grant? I like to think that the community had a part in that happening through its support for the grant, and so there was a little bit of cause and effect there.
I've been volunteering at the museum for 6 years since I moved here from Connecticut, and I like history, I like research, and I also wanted to know the community I live in. So I often think of history as dates and battles and politics and all of that. But the curator comes at it from a different direction. She asks, here is an object, what is its story? What does it tell us about life in Hatfield? And then fill in the details. I think that the volunteers are doing valuable work because we are writing up the descriptions of the new donations and researching and putting things in order so we can share them with other people. I've been doing an interesting thing, which is reading the World War I journals of Marion Billings, who went as a volunteer with the Red Cross canteen workers. Just amazing. And this is so interesting that it's going to be the foundation for a coming up exhibit.
Having funded positions at the museum not only means being able to provide interesting and appropriate work for volunteer skills, but also lets us find, apply for, and win grants, such as the 2 grants we were awarded from Mass Humanities to inventory and research the business records of the Porter and McLeod machine shop.
When I was asked to participate in the grant, I got an email and a phone call and other things, and I thought, this is very peculiar. What kind of machine shop could there be out in the middle of nowhere, which is what I thought. I mean, I'm familiar with the area, and I thought, what did I miss? So I thought, okay, well, it's probably not going to be much, but I'm intrigued, so I'll take a drive from Lowell, which is where I live now, and take a look and see what I see, but I didn't expect to find anything like what I ended up finding. I found a completely boxed set of company records that were brilliantly preserved and archived and indexed with a finding aid, all the things that most historians dream about finding when they see a collection like this. And there it was, just sitting on the top floor of the town hall. And so I said, yeah, I'll work on this project. For me, in a way, I think most of the hard work was done. I had the pleasure of going through an organized set of records and trying to tell a story, which is what I love doing. And so it was just there for me to say, okay, what's the story?
The Historical Society serves such an incredible purpose to retain the heritage and the history of a town. Young people in school don't understand it till they become parents and have children and start to do schoolwork with them, and they want to learn about the heritage of a certain house or a neighborhood or a town or the peoples. That's when they start to appreciate what a historical society is about and what a museum is about. I watch people online through social media that used to grow up here and they want to know more, and to turn them onto your site. All the stuff you have is just incredible. My God, the history of our town cemeteries and what people have done and all the little stories and the interesting bits, that's what young people who become parents start to get an interest in, and they start to come back and say, wow, what are you doing? Can I help, or can I volunteer, or can my kids learn some stories? So I think it's wonderful. It's what brings a town back together in their roots.
The Historical Society works to save Hatfield's history wherever it's found, not just in the town's museums. In 2017, the Historical Society proposed a collaborative grant with the First Congregational Church of Hatfield and the Hatfield Town Clerk's Office. We were awarded a strategic assessment grant from Mass Schwab, the State Historical Records Advisory Board, which brought the state's roving archivist to town to survey all 3 of our archives and help us complete our inventories. The Historical Society has a history of collaboration with the Congregational Church. On New Year's Day 2013, for instance, the Society participated in a bell ringing and ceremony to commemorate the 150th anniversary of President Lincoln's signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, which led to the end of slavery in the United States. And in 2016, the Historical Society collaborated with local historian Robert Romer of Amherst, who had invited the descendant of a Hatfield slave to visit him. The slave was Amos Newport, whom Bob Romer had researched and written about, and the descendant was Alyssa Bailey of Atlanta, who learned of her ancestry from an article of Bob's posted online. Alicia was joined by her sister and her sister's daughter, and Bob was joined by fellow local historian Eric Weber of Williamsburg, who had also done extensive research on Amos Newport.
She arranged to have a visit to Hatfield, and the Historical Society made the arrangements for her and her sister and her daughter to come and visit the parts of Hatfield that the slave Amos Newport may have walked in the mid-1700s. So she came up, I think it was a February day, and they walked Lower Hatfield, and they ended up at the church, all of us, where we were gathered together and decided to ring the church bell, which was a lot of fun, really, because you figure that ringing the church bell is just, a matter of grabbing a rope and pulling the bell. But of course, this thing weighs 2 tons, and it's quite an exercise in strength and endurance. But everybody got a chance to try to ring the bell, and it was a lot of fun. We got it ringing, and we ended off that moment by singing Amazing Grace. And it was amazing that Alicia's young daughter, she kind of led in the singing. She knew all the verses by heart, and it was a very kind of emotional. It was an emotional moment to have her, as a descendant of a slave, come to Hatfield, where we never think about slavery. And I think it had an emotional effect on all of us and a profound effect. And that's all related to what the Historical Society does, is to kind of bring our history alive. It is still alive. There are people living, directly related to our history, and to get people from Atlanta and Hatfield to come together and talk about our history and to relive it, I think is quite a benefit to our community. So we're lucky to have them.
Organizations like the Hatfield and Whately Historical Society do the heavy lifting of keeping this stuff alive. We as a society aren't doing enough to support them, and what would be possible in terms of education and civic attachment if we could build a bridge that was mutually beneficial between historical societies like yours and the way our kids learn in the schools. It would change lives and it would change communities in the most positive way imaginable. But there's nothing deficient in this. The only thing missing from this, the only thing you do is throw a little money in the mix and stir, and it will change the course of history. I mean that.
Not only is the Historical Society committed to saving the material culture and the images of our town to help us understand what it was like to live and work here in earlier times, but they are also committed to saving the stories, including the voices and the sounds of Hatfield, the things you don't realize you cared about until they're gone.
You know, even in really good years, farming is tough. It's just always hard. There's always something that needs to be replaced, or more needs than money. And that hasn't really changed a whole lot over the years. Some years are better, and some years are tougher. You know, there's an awful lot that we don't have, and that's okay. There is so much that we do have. You know what? We've got a great lifestyle. We've got a fabulous family. We have plenty of work to do. Every day, we have plenty to do. We never sit around being bored. So, you know, that's a balance. And I sometimes will sit out on our front porch. I will think about the generations of women who have lived in this home, who have worked the land, raised their children. It's a good life. It's a very good life. And it wasn't easy for any one of them. It's certainly not easy for us today either. That doesn't make it bad. It just makes some days more difficult than others. But really, overall, it's very, very good.